Okay, this is the last section for chapter 10. This is solving the right triangles. Right here, this first piece is talking about the inverse tangent. So if it says the tangent of A is 3 over 4, if you went in reverse, then the inverse tangent of 3 over 4 would get you angle A. Same thing over here. If sine of A is 3 over 5, then the inverse sine of 3 over 5 would give you the measure of angle A. And the last one, the cosine of A is 4 over 5. Then the inverse cosine, that's the one that has a little negative 1 in the exponent, of 4 over 5 will get you the measure of angle A. Next part, it says angle A is an acute angle. Use a calculator to approximate the measure of angle A. So if you're looking for the measure of angle A, you're not just going to put tangent of 3. You're going to do the inverse tangent. So you're going to go second tan and then 3. And that's going to give you 71.6. So that means the angle A is 71.6 degrees. Next one, tangent of A being 2.5. We're going to go inverse tangent of 2.5. And you get 68.2. So angle A would be 68.2 degrees. And then the last one over here, tangent of A is 1. So inverse tangent of 1 will give me measure of my angle, and it's going to be 45 degrees. Next section, it says angle B is an acute angle. Use a calculator to approximate the measure of angle B to the nearest tenth. So we're going to continue doing the same thing, but now it's with sine, so we're going to do inverse sine. So second, and then the sine, and then 0.65, and that's 40.5 degrees for angle B. Next one, inverse sine of 0.30, and it's 17.5. It'll be 17.5 degrees for angle B. And then the last one, inverse sine of 0.8 is 53.1. So angle B would be 53.1 degrees. Over here it says find the value of x. So this is where you're looking for the angle, knowing 2 of the sides. So you have to figure out, is it going to be sine, cosine, or tangent? So we're going to go back to writing so, ka, toa. And that's going to help us to remember if it's sine or cosine or tangent for these problems. So right here, if you're looking from the angle down here on the bottom right, 8 is your opposite, 15 is your adjacent. We don't know the hypotenuse. We don't need to know what the hypotenuse is. Opposite and adjacent is going to be tangent, because this is the only one that has O and A. We're looking for an angle. We're going to use the inverse. And then this fraction is still going to be set up opposite on top, adjacent on the bottom. So it's going to be 8 on top, 15 on the bottom. And the calculator, inverse tangent, 8 divided by 15, and we get 28.1 for what the x would be right there. Next one, same thing. So from this angle, 5 is your opposite, and 13 is your hypotenuse. Opposite and hypotenuse is supposed to be sine. So we're going to go inverse sine. And then sine has opposite on top, so 5 goes on top, hypotenuse on the bottom, 13 goes down to the bottom. And then in the calculator, you're going to go second sine, 5 divided by 13. You get 22.6. And then this one, 8 is right next to it, and it's not the hypotenuse. This is the adjacent leg. And then 10 is your hypotenuse. So adjacent with hypotenuse is cosine. We're looking for an angle, so it's inverse cosine. Cosine has adjacent on top, hypotenuse on the bottom, and then in the calculator, we're going to go second cos to get the inverse. 8 divided by 10, that's 36.9. And number 16, it says use the Pythagorean theorem to find the length of the hypotenuse, then use the inverse tangent to find the measure of angle A to the nearest tenth of a degree. So this is going towards solving the triangle, where you're actually finding all 3 parts of the information, except it's only asking you to find one of the 2 angles. So Pythagorean theorem, you'd go 3 squared plus 5 squared equals c squared. And that'd be 9 plus 25 equals c squared. That'd be 34 equals c squared. And you'd have to square root 34 to find out what c is. And c is 5.8. That would be this side right here, your hypotenuse. There is one of the answers. Then you're going to pretend that you never did that work, and you're going to go with, from this angle, 3 is my opposite, 5 is my adjacent. That's why I'm using tangent. I'm looking for an angle, so it's inverse tangent. Tangent has the opposite on top, so A's opposite is 3. And then it has adjacent on the bottom, so A's adjacent leg would be 5. And then that's what you're going to put in your calculator to find the angle A. So second tan does the inverse, 3 divided by 5, and you get 30.96, which is going to be 31.0. So that means that A is 31.0 degrees. And then if you needed to find B, all you would do is subtract 90 minus this angle, and that'll get you B. 17, Pythagorean theorem, these two are legs, so it's going to be 2 squared plus 7 squared equals c squared. 2 squared is 4, 7 squared is 49. If you add those together, you get 53. And then you have to find the square root of 53, because you want c by itself, not c squared. So square root of 53 is 7.3. There's one of your answers. And then from A, 2 is my opposite, 7 is my adjacent. So for tangent, opposite goes to the top, adjacent goes down to the bottom. This is what I'm putting into my calculator. So I'm going to go second tangent, and then 2 divided by 7, and you get 15.94, which is 15.9. So that means the measure of angle A is 15.9 degrees. I'm sorry, it is so crowded. Okay, number 18, Pythagorean theorem. This is my hypotenuse. These two are my legs. So it's going to be 4 squared plus 5 squared equals c squared. 4 squared is 16. 5 squared is 25. 25 and 16 is 41. And then you have to square root that. So the square root of 41 to get c by itself is going to give us 6.4. And then from A, 4 is opposite, 5 is adjacent. So we're using tangent, we want the angle, so we're doing inverse. And then opposite goes to the top, adjacent goes down to the bottom, and that's what goes in our calculator. So second tangent, and then 4 divided by 5, you get 38.7. And that's the measure of angle A. Number 19, this is kind of a real world version of what we've been doing. So if this is a loading ramp and you know the height that you need to get up to, and you're trying to look for what angle does this need to be, if you have a 15-foot ramp to use, you'd go 3 is opposite, 15 is hypotenuse, opposite with hypotenuse was sine. You want the angle, so you're going to do inverse of that sine. And then because it's inverse sine, your opposite is 3, goes on the top. Hypotenuse is 15, goes down to the bottom. And then put this in your calculator. So second sine, 3 divided by 15, and you get 11.5. On the back side, it says angle A is an acute angle. Use a calculator to approximate the measure of angle A to the nearest tenth of a degree. So if you have the tangent of A over here, then this is where you're going to do inverse, because you want A, not the tangent of A. So you're trying to get rid of the tangent by using its inverse. So second tan, 3.4, you get 73.6. And that would be the measure of the angle in degrees. For the next one, second sine, to get rid of the sine, you get 47.7 degrees. And the next one, second cosine, 0.66, and you get 48.7 degrees. Next one, number 7, inverse sine of 0.4, 23.6 degrees. Number 8, inverse cosine of 0.52, you get 58.7 degrees. And then this one, inverse tangent of 1.4, you get 54.5 degrees. Next problems says find the measure of angle A. So right here we have to make our decision on what do we have and what can we use. So from A, 5 is your opposite and 12 is your adjacent. We don't have the hypotenuse. For opposite and adjacent, if we're thinking about SOHCAHTOA, the one that has opposite and adjacent is tangent. So that's how we choose to use tangent. And then after that, we are looking for the angle, so we're going to do the inverse. That's how we know we're doing inverse and not regular tangent. We're looking for an angle. And then tangent tells us opposite goes to the top, so 5 on top, adjacent to the bottom, 12 on the bottom. Now we set it up in the calculator, second tan, 5 divided by 12, and we get 22.6. So that means the measure of angle A right here, this angle, would be 22.6. Next one, same thing. If we're looking from A, 2 is opposite, and 4 is hypotenuse. So this time, opposite and hypotenuse, if we come back over here, is going to be sine. So we go, okay, using sine, we want an angle, so we want the inverse of sine. And then sine tells us opposite goes to the top and hypotenuse goes down to the bottom. So inverse sine, 2 divided by 4, and we get 30. That's the measure of angle A. Over here, we go, this is your adjacent, and this is your hypotenuse. And then you'd go adjacent and hypotenuse was cosine, and we want the angle, so it's inverse. Cosine tells us the adjacent one goes on top, and the hypotenuse goes down to the bottom. Now, if you know the shortcuts from the beginning of the chapter, you know this is a 45, 45, 90. So I'm expecting it to be 45. Well, let me show you that the calculator gives us the same thing. You go second, cos 3 divided by, I'm going to put it in parentheses just to be careful, 3 square root of 2. And I need all that to be in another parentheses to close the one that was open at the beginning. And if I put that in my calculator, I get 45. Number 13, it says find PR. So if you have 2 of the sides, you're looking for the third one, you're going to use Pythagorean theorem here. These 2 are the legs, you're looking for the hypotenuse. So 3 squared and 6 squared are going to go together on one side. C squared is going to go on the other side. 3 squared is 9, 6 squared is 36. 36 and 9 is 45. And then you have to square root that to get C by itself. So the square root of 45 is 6.7. When you're looking for an angle, if we're looking from P over here, you're going to go, okay, from P, that's my opposite. 3 is adjacent. Opposite and adjacent is going to tell me to use tangent. So then I go, okay, on number 14, I'm going to use the tangent. I don't have the angle, I'm looking for that, so it's inverse tangent. Tangent says opposite goes on top, so 6 goes to the top and 3 goes down to the bottom. From there, it's calculator work. So I go inverse tangent, 6 divided by 3, and I get 63.4. So there's my answer for P. And if I know this is 63.4, I don't have to do that process again. I can just do for angle R, the last angle, 90 minus the 63.4 that I got from P, and you get 26.6. Number 16, you're doing the same process that we just did in 3 separate problems all at once. So we have 2 of the sides, we're looking for the last one. That means Pythagorean theorem. The x and the 3 are both legs. They stay together. The 6 is the hypotenuse, goes by itself. 3 squared is going to be 9. 6 squared is going to be 36. This time we need to subtract 9 to move it across. So x squared is going to be 27. And then we're going to square root that to get x by itself. So the square root of 27 is 5.2. And then we still need to find angle x up here. So from here, the original numbers that came with this drawing were this 3 and this 6. 3 is your adjacent, and then 6 is your hypotenuse. Adjacent and hypotenuse is going to be cosine. We're looking for an angle, so inverse cosine. Adjacent is supposed to be on top, hypotenuse is supposed to be down at the bottom. And then put that in your calculator, second cos, and 3 divided by 6. You get 60. So now that we know the measure of angle x is 60. And then for z, we're just going to go 90 minus 60. So the measure of angle z, 90 minus 60 is going to give us 30. Next problem, same process. If you have 2 out of the 3 sides, use Pythagorean theorem. 5 squared and 8 squared, since they're both legs, go on the same side. G squared goes by itself because it's the hypotenuse. 5 squared is 25. 8 squared is 64. 64 and 25 is 89. And then we have to square root that to get g by itself. You get 9.4. Now we're going to find one of our angles. So if I start with E over here, 8 is my opposite, 5 is my adjacent. Opposite and adjacent is going to be tangent. I'm looking for an angle, so I'm using inverse tangent. Opposite goes to the top, adjacent goes down to the bottom. And then in the calculator, you're going to go second tan to get the inverse. 8 divided by 5. You get 57.99, which is 58.0. So E is 58.0 degrees. And then the last part is F. We don't have to do that process all over again. We can just go 90 minus the 58.0 that we got earlier. And that means that F has to be 32.0. And then the last one, you go, I have 2 out of the 3 sides. So those are legs, they go together. 5 squared is 25, 12 squared is 144, 25 and 144 is 169, the square root of 169 is 13, so there is the missing hypotenuse. And then when it comes to the legs, when it comes to the angles, pick one of your angles. From this angle, 12 would be my opposite, and 5 would be adjacent. And opposite and adjacent, according to Sokotoa, is going to be tangent. We want an angle, so it's inverse tangent. Since we have opposite being 12, that's going to go on top. Adjacent is 5, that goes down to the bottom. And in the calculator, you go second tan to get the inverse. 12 divided by 5, and you get 67. So that means the measure of angle J is 67.4, and then after that we subtract from 90, you get the other angle, so the measure of angle L is 22.6.